Hello, this will be the last lecture for Chapter 7, and this will be long-run economic growth. And so long-run economic growth reflects an economy whose production capacity increases over time, which means that our production possibilities frontier, PPF, will be shifting outward, which is what we want. And that's quite important for the long-run living standard of a nation's citizens. Now, this is not cheap. There's a cost today. As we know, there's a cost pretty much for everything. And if you want to make workers more productive in the future, you have to do things today that's quite costly. So long-run growth is achieved by more workers, which is kind of the not a very sophisticated way to achieve economic growth. It does give us growth, but it really doesn't increase our living standard because you're simply adding more people with the same production per person. What we really need is to have more output per worker. That's critical. If you have more output per worker, then not only do you move your frontier outward, but you also move it outward at a faster rate than the increase in the population. So, as I said, more workers will increase GDP, but GDP per capita, which is per person, is something different. I mean, we like to increase our GDP, but for higher living standard for our citizens, for the next generation, we need higher GDP per capita. And that's critical, and what's critical for that is what's known as labor productivity, which is the output per worker. Labor productivity is how we increase GDP per capita. Labor productivity growth is the change in output over the change in labor. And so if we have growth, then the numerator, the change in output, will increase at a faster rate than the change in labor. And down here we have our real output per worker. And it goes back to 1950 up to 2020. And you can see the good news is that it tends to be increasing, sometimes a little faster than other rates. And that's something that economists who specialize in growth will study. And so higher productivity growth can be achieved through investment into more capital. So more capital gives workers more tools. That's one way to increase labor productivity. And the measurement of how much capital workers have is known as the capital intensity index. This is the ratio of capital to hours. Well, it should be hours worked. Hours worked. This goes back to the 1990s, up to 2015 there. And you can see this gives us, if it's increasing, we're giving each worker more tools, more equipment. You can see it's been going up pretty steadily until the Great Recession in 2008, 9, 10. And since then, it's kind of flattened off. And we're not quite sure the reason for that. And again, that's being studied right now by economists who, again, specialize in economic growth. So we can give workers more tools, more capital, and we can also give them better technology. So we can develop new techniques, new products called technological innovation. And that'll be creating new kind of products like the internet, robots, computers, and so forth. Or we can adopt and/or adapt a technology from abroad, known as technological diffusion. We took an idea from abroad and we make it better. And in the United States, Americans have been very good at taking ideas, essentially creating new ideas ourselves, and also taking other ideas from other nations and making them better. And last, I found this in the LA Times back in 2014. It simply maps out some of the new technological products going back to the telephone, 1876. Probably hard for you to see that. But here we look at economic growth here, and this is in terms of our increase in productivity. And you can see this is real GDP per capita here. And we have the phonograph there. We have the vacuum tubes, television, nuclear reactor, microwave, internet, iPad, tablet, and so forth. So these new ideas, these new products, they generate lots of production, they create a lot of jobs, but also creates openings for new products. So what they did back, say, in the early 1900s can lead to innovations in the 1930s, which leads to innovations in the 1960s, and so on and so on and so on. So we keep building on ideas that we worked on in the past. And sometimes an idea that we created back in, say, the 1950s, we put aside for a while, and then all of a sudden we can go back and we say, oh, maybe we could do something with that, and we can actually make a new product. And so things like microwaves, technology, the way we can transmit information now through cell phones, things like that. Those are ideas created a long, long time ago that we didn't really have a commercial use for it until maybe the 1980s and 90s. So again, we have to keep pushing the envelope. We have to keep coming up with new ideas, new techniques, and that leads to long-term economic growth. And that's it for Chapter 7. Next chapter is Chapter 8.